just need to sit with that for a minute. Beautiful. Beautiful choir. Lovely Susan, who's just such a little bright light. We had a wonderful today service, healing service on Friday night, and that may be what's messing with everything. We got the vibration going so high in this room that it may be messing with our electronics or something, but these beautiful bowls, if you've got to come to this thing sometime, it's amazing. Just they're all aligned with the chakras, and so it gets your energy flowing, and life's good. And whew, so thank you. Excuse me. So much to say, so little time. No, actually, it's pretty simple. I love this understanding of the teachings. Many of you know that I grew up in a traditional Christian church. I learned the Bible. I studied the Bible. I went to vacation Bible school. I won a mitt one time because I got the most passages right. But really it was later in my journey when I came into understanding the Bible from a metaphysical point of view that a lot of the teachings that I had been raised with took on new meaning. Not that the previous meaning was wrong, it's just there's evolution, there's levels of understanding. I don't know if you've ever had this experience, but you hear things, and then one day you hear something, and you go, oh my God, I get it, right? It was always there, and yet all of a sudden it's like, wow. And so that, when Jesus is speaking to us about having eyes to see and ears to hear, it's about moving beyond the current level of perception of reality to a more expanded understanding of this awareness. That this one power, this one presence, this one being we call God is everywhere present, is always available. It is closer than our hands and feet and nearer than our breath. And so we live in the midst of that. And so when we become aware that we're no longer trying to go in search of, but rather to reveal what is. Yes. Right? When you recognize that peace is not something that you create, peace exists. Yes. It's like light exists. And darkness is simply the absence of light. Chaos is simply the absence of peace. So it changes everything. It did for me. All of my spiritual practice as a child was all about getting God to behave. And I had certain parameters around what that meant and what that would look like. But then when I realized that we're living in a universe of spiritual law, that everything is connected, that all is one, and that I'm already in that, then it's no longer about getting the universe to be different, getting God to be different, but rather, thank you. And so I know if Horace would get himself different, then my life would really work. It's true for all of us, right? It's about learning who we are. So I love that we are co-creative beings with the divine. That we are always have been, always will be, co-creative beings with the divine. What does that mean? It means there's one life, one intelligence that is the creator of all. Right? There is that thing, you see, there's in our Judeo-Christian Bible, we have 3 different creation myths. You ever notice that? Of course you have, because you're all studying like me on Saturday night. Ooh, let's read the Bible. And you're like, wait a minute. What just happened here? So we have the first evolution where it says, in the beginning. In the beginning, there's this whatever, and then all of a sudden God started saying, let there be, and light happened, and creation happened. This amazing thing took place, which is the understanding of the creative process that is ongoing. That anytime we're in that presence and we say, let there be, it comes into being. This is what it means to be co-creative. And then all of a sudden you're reading along, you're like, wow, this is cool, the whole universe, God's going to take a day off, and life's good, and then all of a sudden it starts all over. And then it starts differently because God creates man, and then all of a sudden he says, oh, what am I going to do? I got to have a woman and grab a rib, and that whole story. That's the second one. But then we come into John in the New Testament, and he starts all over again. In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. Now, this has been interpreted in many different ways, and I'm not here to give us a theological explanation, but I would like to propose to you that we understand this from this metaphysical, spiritual point of view. What is a word? A vibration? An idea? Right? I say house. Now you think something. I don't know what that version is because that's unique to us, but it's going to look something like, maybe it looks like the house you live in or grew up in. Right? So our words are representative of an idea that is unfolding into form. The Greek for that is logos. Right? In the beginning was the logos, was the divine idea, and there was with God, and it was God. So as we are listening to that, you see, again, not to make an argument, but some have said that means that was referring to Jesus. For me, it's a little different. It's about that idea of the divine idea that is with us always. And we become powerful. We become powerful by recognizing the power of our being, the power of the word we speak, the power of the universe moving through us. Right? So I want you to work with me for a moment. We're going to need to do this rather quickly. So I'm passing out imaginary seeds. So if you could pass those amongst you and just take one and put one in your hand. Okay. Come on. And please don't spill them. It's so hard to get out of the carpet, so just be careful. Right? And so look in your hand, this seed. Now, some of you may have different types of seeds. What kind of seed have you got? Anybody? Shout it. Pumpkin? Milkweed? Okay. Got a bunch of different kinds of seeds. Now, what is the chance that that seed that you hold in your hand, whether it's a pumpkin or a milkweed, becomes that plant? What is the chance of that? 100%. Absolutely. It's not going to, your pumpkin seed is not going to become cucumber. No. Well, that's weird. I want a cucumber. I want cucumbers, I say. I crave cucumbers. I have a whole recipe for cucumber salad. And so I'm going to affirm the truth that I have cucumbers. And yet if I plant pumpkins, what happens? God punishes you by bringing pumpkins. Right? Think about how we talk about our lives sometimes. I can't believe that for 5 years I've been planting seeds of negativity and now there's all this negativity in my life. What the heck? What's that all about? Right? Now, take that seed. What is the chance that that seed will come into fulfillment?
Depends where you plant it.
Oh, this isn't 100%er, is it? Okay. This has something to do with the soil in which it's planted, the cultivation of the seed itself. It has to do with not the divine intelligence that is in the seed, but in the conditions that allow that to either come forward. So Jesus speaks to us and he says, a sower goes out to sow, and some of the seeds fell on rocky soil, where the birds came and snatched those seeds and took them away. Have you ever had that great idea? You had a great idea. Maybe you had $1 million maker. And all of a sudden it was gone. And you moved on back onto your life. Right? It wasn't planted in deep, rich soil. It just was there. Somebody else said, or even worse, you watch the TV one day and for $19.95, somebody else is selling your product. Oh, that's annoying. That is so annoying, right? So then he says, sometimes a seed falls on shallow soil. The rain comes, the sun comes up, and all of a sudden it shoots into being. But then it is withered by the fullness of the sun. Ever had that happen? Like, I got this affirmation thing down. I'm affirming what I want. It comes into being and you're like, cool. Next week you're like, what happened? Right? Some falls in amongst the weeds. You have a great idea. You have this brilliant idea of possibility for your life. I've been praying. I've been studying. I've been listening to Reverend Marty. And I get it. I know why I'm here. And I'm going to go make a difference. And here's how I'm going to do it. And so you go to your Thanksgiving dinner and you start sharing with your family this brilliant idea that you hold in your heart that will change the world and uplift the planet. And everybody stands and claps and says, yes! Or they remind you of when you were 11 years old and you X, Y, or Z. Right? Or you go into a negative space and try and share this brilliant idea and people say things like, what makes you think you can? We tried that once, it didn't work. Blah, 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 blah. And before you know it, you're like, oh, wow, seemed like such a great idea. Felt full of life, felt full of vibration, felt full of whatever, but maybe they're right. And so the weeds of doubt begin to choke out the seed of possibility. Bill was telling me, we had our wonderful ground crew. Can we just hear it for our ground crew, by the way? Keep our grounds beautiful. And Bill was out toiling in the soil. He was cultivating. And he said, the Bermuda grass is the thing. Right? You got to get that stuff early. Because if you don't get the Bermuda grass early, if you don't want it there, if you don't get it early, it goes deep. Some of us feel like we're cultivating years of Bermuda grass that has been allowed to be in our consciousness. And we think, oh, I've got it cleared out. Only next week to come back and go, ooh, it's coming back stronger than ever. Right? Have you had this experience? Yeah. So just this is what I would have us understand. What this passage is about is not can an idea come into form. We know it can, 100%. And 100% that the idea will come into form according to its own nature. The variable is the consciousness that we create to create the soil so that the divine idea can come into being, and then, as it is said, it multiplies itself 30 times, 60 times, 100 times what was planted. When you plant a tomato seed, and it goes through the life cycle, and at the end of the season, you're like, oh my God, what do I do with all these tomatoes? Right? And you're handing off tomatoes, by the way, I'm available. If you have fresh tomatoes, I am available to help you with that problem. Right? Because the intelligence within that, coupled with the proper condition, produces far beyond our imagination. This is what Jesus is speaking to us about. Let those that have ears to hear, hear, and eyes to see, see. But we, as all good gardeners, are responsible not for creating a life process, right? I don't know how your seed becomes that. There's an intelligence within it that does know that. I don't know. I know what to do, but I don't know how that happens. I don't know how life happens, but it does. That's enough. Knowing that it happens and knowing how to work with those conditions says, let me cultivate the conditions of my mind. That's why we talk about spiritual practice, which implies more than once, right? You see, we live in what I always call our microwave world. We want instant results. We want things to change. We want to take a pill. It's like I want what I want when I want it, as my nephew said to me one time so brilliantly. But Uncle Marty, I want what I want when I want it. That's fine when you're 4. You guys can get away with this. It's when you're 40, it's like, right? So Jesus is speaking to us saying, understand that we are always cultivating our minds. We are always cultivating our relationship with the divine. That it is an ongoing practice because we are in the world. We are bombarded with information. Sometimes they say that there's some negativity in the world. There's some people that are less than loving. There are some people that are less than supportive. There are some people who don't know who they are and act accordingly. Right? In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. As we are speaking the Word, that's what we talk about. We speak the Word. Our teaching is about learning to speak the Word, to pray affirmatively, to recognize that that which we seek already exists. And so I began to understand this when I learned this from Dr. Michael Beckwith, this idea of the levels of consciousness, the levels of understanding. And so many of us come into positive mental attitude or spiritual new thought practices. I mean, the stuff's out there. The stuff is so out there. Go to any sales seminar in any sales industry in the world, they will tell you about how you focus on what you want right? This is not like secret teachings anymore. It's everywhere. We would say there's a spiritual practice that goes along with it, right? So that we're cultivating the consciousness that we hold. And the consciousness that we hold is simply the sum total of what we think and believe to be, think, feel, and believe to be so. And some of those pieces are conditioned very early. We learned lessons about money. We learned lessons about relationships. We learned lessons about how men are or women are. We learned lessons about how the other is whoever the other is. Right? And we may have accepted those things to be true. And then we lived according as if it were so. Right? See, there's a word. That's the challenge. That's the word I was looking for. That's the challenge of our belief system. That if someone said the unexamined life is not worth living, the unexamined belief will continue to unfold according to its own nature until we're willing to take a new look and say, is that still true? Is that still what I want? And if it's not, then we cultivate the soil. So when we're looking at this, we begin this journey into metaphysics, and Michael Beckwith talks about these 4 levels of consciousness, and he says the first one is that to-me level of consciousness that you see very prevalent in our world. We might call it victim mentality. Life is happening to me. And I'm doing the best I can. I'm making the best of it. Maybe I believe in powers outside of myself that are doing it to me, or whatever, right? And we said, well, I'm going to look for a new way. And then we find ourselves in a sales seminar in a church like this or something that begins to say, wait a minute. You have a creative capacity to bring forth what you think and believe. So let us look at our belief. And so we learn the power of affirmation. And so now, rather than life doing it to me, I am doing it to life. Right? I am announcing, I'm proclaiming, I am affirming, I am creating, as my friend used to say, princes, palaces, and parking spaces. Right? Have you ever done that where you visualize something that came into being? You're like, hello. Yes, of course. right? And that's great. It's wonderful because what we learn in that is that we are responsible for our thoughts. And as we can learn to control, if I can say that word, our thinking and our process, then we can begin to control the results in our lives. But lo unto you, my friends, and hear with ears to hear, that's not the end of the journey. In fact, there comes a point when we must let go of that. Because now what we are learning, what we are recognizing, is the divine celebrates its fullness. That is the nature of life, is to fulfill itself. The nature of life through the tomato seed or whatever seed. Do you still hold on to your seeds? I notice some of you are not being very careful with these. Right? Whatever that is has the intelligence to come into being fully, right? Life delights in its self-expression. It creates through its creation. And so it has all that is necessary for it to come into being. Some of us think we've got to manage our own lives. Like, thanks God, I'll take it from here. Right? But when we really recognize that life is simply seeking its own revelation, life is simply seeking to make itself known, we no longer need to control. We just need to create the conditions of our mind so that we are a welcoming place for God to happen. Yes. We are a welcoming place for love to happen. We are a welcoming place for peace to happen. We are a welcoming place for abundance to happen. We don't no longer have to know the hows of it. We don't even have to do a vision board one around it, although vision boards are cool. I get it. Right? It's that knowing. Jesus spoke to us when he said, "Of myself I do nothing." But it is this power within me, the Father within me, that does the work. He made himself a welcome place for the divine to reveal itself through him and as him. And we call it the presence of the Christ. Right? It's available to all. There's another dimension, so no longer is it to it, but it's through me. Through me. Use me, God. Use me. Allow me to be the vessel and the vehicle through which love is made known, which goodness is happening, right? It's the through me. Now, you got to go through the stages. You got to learn these things. And then ultimately, there is that state of being that is not even, there's no longer any separation. It's rather as me. Yes. Jesus said to us, those that have seen me have seen the power. Now, Buddha said it too. So if they were talking about themselves as individuals, as ego statements, you go, oh. Now, again, I would say, don't go to your cocktail parties and say this stuff, right? Hey, just wanted you to know I am God. Nice to see ya. Yeah. Just, there's an appropriate audience for everything, right? But when you get that, really, I am the presence of the divine. And it's not an ego thing. It is just a simple recognition. In fact, it's a humble statement. That by my presence, I am healing. By my presence, love is felt. By my presence, life is made new. So we're all in this process trying to figure out where we are. I just always like to return to it because what we want to remember is that consciousness is like the iceberg. There's this little piece that where we're consciously aware. And then there's this whole other part of it where what really is happening is underneath that. Right? So you're affirming, you're taking your affirmation, you're affirming abundance, you're affirming joy, you're affirming whatever. But as long as that piece that lies in the subconscious that says you're unworthy, you're not lovable, what makes you, those hidden limiting beliefs are sitting down there, they're influencing the outcome. So the work is to keep revealing who we are, deepening in our spiritual practice. Because what Jesus tells us is that when you plant that divine seed in rich cultivated soil, it comes forth, multiplying according to its own nature, not by 2, but by 30 times, by 60 times, by 100 times. And when life comes forward, you realize this is not about me, and yet I am the gardener. The divine idea planted in the willing soil, cultivated, brings forth abundance. I have come that you might have life and have it more abundantly. So let us go forward into the world this day, remembering the truth of who we are, recommitting to our spiritual practice, recommitting to remembering who we are, and remembering that every day we're planting seeds. And those seeds do bring forth their own kind. So let our seeds be those of love, of compassion, of joy, of abundance, and all good. Let us pray. Breathing into this moment, breathing into this awareness, recognizing the one life ever present, always available. We simply remember that it is in this presence that we live, move, and have our very being. We open our hearts, we open our minds, we open the very portal of our soul to know this at a cellular level. To know that we are powerful, that we are co-creative beings, that there can be no separation between the Creator and its creation. So we're opening ourselves, we're speaking this word of truth, we're allowing the Logos to go forth, to shine light, to shine love, to bring forth greater good. We accept for ourselves that we do live and move and have our being in this presence, that this presence is wholeness, that that wholeness expresses and reveals itself as health and well-being and vitality. We know that we are living in an abundant universe, for we are one with the source and the substance of all that is. So we open our own hearts and minds to be gracious givers and generous receivers of the divine bounty, to flow in the process of life. We know that love is indeed the only reality. And so just as light casts out darkness, so too does love cast out anything unlike itself. We allow our relationships to be healed and strengthened through the power of this love. We accept peace and joy and harmony. And so we are blessed right here, right now, in the presence of the divine. We give thanks for the blessings. We bless this spiritual community, this divine idea unfolding, knowing that it is a blessing to all. We extend our blessing to our brothers and sisters, for we recognize there is only one race, and that is the human race. That all of these names that we give for each other are really immaterial, because we are all brothers and sisters of the Most High. And so we accept peace on earth. We bless all. We're holding the vision for a world that works for all, for a planet at peace. And as always, I bless all priests, rabbis, ministers, teachers of all faiths, for I recognize the many pathways to the divine. I know where two or more are gathered, the I am is there, and it is good. So we send forth this word to be a blessing to all. We know that there is a divine law operating upon the word spoken here that works in perfect timing and in divine right order. So there's nothing more to do but to give thanks and to release this word. And know that through the power of the living Christ, it goes forth to heal, to bless, and to prosper all. And so in profound gratitude, I simply give thanks. I allow it to be so. And together we say, and so it is. Amen.